At the cafeteria wing yesterday afternoon, Veronica sat on a bench outside hydroponics bay 7 for exactly 1 minute and 17 predator cubs materialized from ventilation shafts, bearing stolen contraband they believed constituted proper human tribute. Let me be clear about something. I've been xenopediatric research director on this station for 6 cycles. 6 cycles of managing the most dangerous juvenile specimens in 3 sectors. These cubs, these little nightmares with their razor teeth and retractable claws, and those unsettling amber eyes, they don't just appear for anyone. They certainly don't organize spontaneous gift-giving ceremonies. But there she was, Veronica Station. Florist. Arrived on the transport 30 hours prior. Her entire job description involved making the mess hall less depressing with potted plants, nothing in her file suggested she possessed any xenobiological training whatsoever. Her previous employment history included 2 flower shops and something called a wedding venue that I still don't fully understand. She'd been walking back from delivering some ferns to the observation deck, stopped at the bench, sat down, pulled out a ration bar. That's when it started. The first cub dropped from the ceiling, vent with a metallic clang, landing on all 4s in that unsettling way they have, quadrupedal, covered in mottled gray fur that shifts patterns when they're excited. This one was maybe 70 cm at the shoulder, fangs just starting to come in properly. It had something in its mouth, a boot. Not just any boot, a station security boot, still laced, possibly still containing a foot, though I desperately hoped not. The cub padded directly to Veronica, dropped the boot at her feet, and sat back on its hunches, waiting, those amber eyes fixed on her face with absolute focus. You have to understand, these cubs had been contained in a reinforced habitat for 3 weeks. Reinforced. We'd upgraded the barriers twice after they'd somehow dissolved the first set. They weren't supposed to be loose in the ventilation system. They definitely weren't supposed to be collecting footwear. Veronica looked at the boot, looked at the cub, said, "Oh, thank you," and touched the cub's head. I was watching this from the observation station, 15 m away. My beverage container slipped from my hand. The cub made a sound, not the hissing snarl we documented, not the warning growl, a sort of rumbling purr. That shouldn't have been anatomically possible given their throat structure. Then it turned and bounded back toward the vent, and I thought, hoped, prayed to whatever deities still listened that this was an isolated incident. 4 more cubs appeared from different vents simultaneously. They were carrying items, a data pad, still displaying someone's personal correspondence, 17 spoons somehow bundled together with wire, a medical scanner, a potted plant that I recognized from the commander's office, something that looked disturbingly organic that I chose not to examine too closely. They arranged themselves in a semicircle around Veronica's bench, deposited there. Offerings sat in identical poses, tails curled around their front paws, watching her with that same focused intensity. "Oh my," Veronica said. She set down her ration bar. "You've all been very busy, haven't you?" She touched each cub's head in turn, examined each gift with genuine interest, praised the spoon collections organization, asked where they'd found such a healthy plant specimen. The cubs purred, all of them in harmony. I activated my communicator. Vex, get to hydroponics bay 7 now. Bring containment equipment and possibly sedative. How many escaped? Vex's voice crackled back. So far 5. But I suspect that number is optimistic. I was correct. By the time I reached ground level, 12 more cubs had emerged. They brought increasingly concerning items: a functioning laser cutter, someone's personal effects container, 3 different flavors of industrial lubricant, a fire suppression canister, a decorative wall hanging depicting the station's founding, a piece of whole plating that absolutely should not have been removable. They weren't just escaping containment. They were ransacking the entire station with systematic efficiency. Veronica accepted each gift with identical graciousness. She thanked a cub for the whole plating, like it was a particularly nice bouquet. Complimented another on the laser cutter's excellent condition, asked a third if the lubricant came in other colors. The cubs were building something. Using their collected materials, they'd started constructing an elaborate structure around her bench. The hull plating formed a base. The fire suppression canister became a support pillar. The data pad was somehow integrated into what appeared to be a control interface. The spoons outlined a perimeter. It looked like a shrine or a throne or possibly a containment field generator, though that seemed unlikely given the spoons. Vex arrived with the containment equipment. She took one look at the situation, then looked at me. Director, what exactly am I seeing? I'm not entirely certain. Current hypothesis is mass hallucinogenic exposure. The cubs are decorating, yes, around the new floors. Apparently. Should I attempt retrieval? I watched a cub carefully position the decorative wall hanging behind Veronica's bench, adjusting it twice to achieve optimal placement. I suspect that would end poorly for everyone involved. Thorne showed up next. Security, xenopsychologist, 3 advanced degrees, specialized in predator species behavioral analysis. She stood beside me in silence for approximately 90 seconds. Then she said, "They've bonded to her." "That's impossible. She's been on station for barely a day. These cubs have been isolated since arrival. There's been no contact window. I'm observing contact right now." "You know what I mean." Thorne pulled out her analysis scanner, ran a full spectrum behavioral assessment. The readings made her crest flatten against her skull, which was never a positive sign. "Director, these cubs are exhibiting pack loyalty displays. They've identified her as a dominant pack member, possibly the dominant pack member based on what she arranged some ferns in the mess hall. I don't have an explanation, but look at their positioning: defensive perimeter formation, offering behavior grooming requests." She pointed at a cub that was pressing its head against Veronica's knee, clearly requesting attention. "That's submission to authority. They've accepted her as pack leader. She's a florist. She's their florist." Now, more cubs arrived. The count reached 17. Each brought tribute: a medical kit, someone's personal journal, a container of coffee grounds, a small statue, 3 power cells, a completely intact, still functioning communications array that must have weighed twice what the cub carrying it weighed. Veronica examined each item with patient interest. She organized them into categories, commented on quality and condition, asked questions about where things came from, like she expected the cubs to Answer, they did answer, not with words, but with chirps and rumbles and body gestures. They were communicating. With her, this is unprecedented. Thorne muttered, her scanner working. Over time, multi-generational predator species don't establish pack bonds with xenomorphs. It's not behaviorally possible. The social structure doesn't allow for it. Should we contact Commander Yeltris and tell her what? That 17 classified research specimens have escaped. Containment ransacked multiple secure areas and are now worshipping the flower. Lady, when you phrase it that way, it sounds problematic. It is problematic, Director. Those cubs accessed areas that require thrill security clearance. They removed whole plating. They have power cells there, building something that my scanner identifies as having energy signatures. I looked at the structure taking shape. Around Veronica's bench, the cubs had incorporated the power cells into the base. The communications array was somehow connected to the fire suppression canister. The laser cutter was positioned at a 45 degrees angle pointing outward. The spoon still outlined everything, but now they were arranged in what looked disturbingly like a circuit pattern. Is that a defensive fortification? I asked. Worse, it's a habitat. There, building her a nest. Veronica finished her ration bar, wiped her hands on her maintenance coverall, looked at the 17 cubs surrounding her, and said, well, you're all very sweet, but I should probably get back to work. Those decorative grasses won't plant themselves. She stood up. Every cub immediately moved to block her path, not aggressively, just positioning themselves between her and every possible exit vector. A living barrier of fur and fangs and absolute determination. Oh, Veronica said, you want me to stay? The cubs made sounds. Agreement. Sounds. We'd never documented agreement sounds before. They weren't supposed to have agreement sounds. I have responsibilities, though. The hydroponics bay needs attention. A cub grabbed the hem of her coverall gently in its teeth. Another pressed against her legs. A third made a whining sound that contained far too much emotional complexity for a species we'd classified as prescient. Veronica sat back down. All right, a few more minutes. But then I really do need to go. The cubs resumed their positions around her, settled into comfortable arrangements. Several leaned against her legs, others curled up on the bench beside her. One particularly bold specimen climbed into her lap. They were calm, completely, utterly calm. These were the same cubs that had attempted to breach containment 17 times in 3 weeks. The same cubs that had injured 4 handlers, the same cubs that had required sedation for every medical examination. They were purring. Thorne, I said quietly, your professional assessment. We have a problem, Director. Elaborate. Those cubs aren't leaving her. If we try to forcibly separate them, they'll interpret it as a threat to pack leadership. The behavioral response would be violent. If we leave them with her, we're allowing 17 unconstrained predators to remain loose on a research station. Yes, those are both unacceptable options. Also, yes, I activated station-wide communication. Commander Yeltris, this is Director Cves. We have a situation that requires your immediate attention at hydroponics Bay 7. The commander's response came through after a brief delay. Defined situation, Director. The containment subjects have established an unauthorized social hierarchy with civilian personnel. Attempts at separation are projected to result in defensive violence. The subjects are currently constructing what appears to be a permanent habitat structure using stolen station equipment. Long pause. Are you telling me the Cubs escaped again, all 17 there, surrounding the new florist? Another pause, longer this time. I'll be there in 5 minutes. Do not attempt intervention until I arrive. The communication cut off. Vex was still standing nearby, containment equipment held uselessly at her side. Director, what do we do? I watched Veronica gently scratch behind a cub's ears while 3 others wrestled playfully at her feet. Another cub was bringing her something new. It looked like a container of those nutritional supplements from the xenobiology lab. Wait, I zoomed my visual enhancers. The container bore markings from the restricted research section, the section where we kept experimental dietary formulas, the section that required biometric access and was monitored continuously. How did they access Lab 7? I said aloud. Lab 7. Thorne's attention snapped to focus. That's impossible. The security on that section would prevent even adult specimens from breaching it. The cub deposited the container at Veronica's feet. She picked it up, examined the label, frowned slightly. These supplements look expired, she said. To the cub, the compound separation is visible. You shouldn't be eating these. The cub made a questioning sound. See this layer here? She tilted the container, showing the visible stratification in the solution. That means the suspension has broken down. It's not nutritionally viable anymore, possibly toxic depending on what grew in the medium. She was right. I could see the separation from 15 m away. Those supplements were at least 3 months past their usage date. Why would they bring her expired supplements? Vex asked. Thorne's scanner was displaying new readings. Director, the cubs are malnourished. That's impossible. They're on carefully calibrated dietary protocols. We optimize their nutrition based on home world data. My scanner disagrees. They're showing deficiencies in 17 different micronutrients. Severe deficiencies. I felt something cold settle in my core. But we followed the protocols exactly. The protocols might be wrong. Commander Yeltris arrived with a security detail. She assessed the situation with one comprehensive look, then turned to me. Explain, Director. I gave her the summary. Cubs escaped. Found the florist, brought gifts, built nest, refused to leave, malnourished. Despite perfect protocols. Yeltris listened without interruption. Then she approached the perimeter of cubs carefully. They watched her but didn't move to intercept. Their attention remained primarily on Veronica. Human, Yeltris said. I'm Commander Yeltris, Station Authority. Can you tell me what's happening here? Veronica looked up from examining another container the cubs had brought her. I think they're hungry, Commander. Properly hungry. These supplements they're bringing me are all expired or incorrectly formulated, and they keep bringing me these. She gestured at several plant specimens arranged beside the bench. These are from the restricted xenobotany sections. High nutrient varieties. They're trying to show me what they need. You're suggesting our research team has been feeding them incorrectly. I'm suggesting they're not getting what their bodies need. I've seen this before. With flowers, you can give a plant every scientifically recommended nutrient and it'll still die if you're missing one trace element it specifically requires. Yeltris turned to me. Director, I had no response. That wouldn't sound like making excuses. Our protocols were developed by experts, peer-reviewed, approved by 3 oversight committees. They should have been perfect. The Cubs brought more items. They were accelerating more containers, more plants, a medical text, a chemical analysis device. They were trying to communicate something, and we'd been ignoring them for 3 weeks. One cub approached with something different, not a tool or a container or a plant. It was carrying a small, limp form. Another cub, smaller, weaker, barely moving. It placed the small cub at Veronica's feet and made a sound I'd never heard before, a pleading sound. "Oh no," Veronica said softly. She picked up the small cub carefully. "How long has she been like this?" The cubs responded with a chorus of distressed sounds. They moved closer, forming a tighter circle. The defensive posture was gone. This was different. This was desperation. So there I was, watching a florist hold a dying cub while 16 others waited for her to perform a miracle, and my entire research program collapsed around my ears. The small cub was barely breathing, fur matted, eyes dull, limbs hanging limp. I'd seen this deterioration pattern before in specimens that rejected station nutrition. We'd lost 3 cubs in the first week, classified it as environmental stress adaptation failure. Adjusted protocols, continued research. We'd been killing them with science. Veronica cradled the small one against her chest, examined the containers the cubs had brought, looked at the plant specimens. Her expression shifted from concern to something I recognized from my own research days: pattern recognition, solution formulation. "Commander," she said, not looking up, "I need access to a chemistry station. Basic equipment, nothing fancy." "Absolutely not," I interjected. "Those cubs are research specimens under controlled conditions. Any intervention requires approval from 3 departments and Director Kravish." Veronica's voice stayed level, polite. But her eyes, when she looked at me, were not polite at all. "This cub is dying. Your protocols are killing her. I can help, or you can watch her die while you file approval requests. Choose quickly." Commander Yeltris studied Veronica for a long moment, then she nodded. "Vex, escort our florist to Lab 3. Provide whatever equipment she requests." "Commander, I must protest," I started. "Noted, overruled. Move people." The cubs followed, all of them. When Vex tried to lead Veronica away, they formed an escort formation around her, protective, vigilant, still carrying their collected materials. They weren't leaving her, and they weren't leaving their sick packmate. Lab 3 was my primary research space. Seeing 17 predator cubs pad through it on Veronica's heels felt like watching a professional violation in real time. They arranged themselves around the central workspace, watching as she gently placed the small cub on an examination platform. "I need a mortar and pestle," Veronica said, "or anything that crushes plant matter, clean containers for mixing, a heat source, access to your supplement-based compounds." Vex provided the equipment. Movements uncertain, the cubs watched every action, amber eyes tracking each tool. Veronica started working. She took the plant specimens the cubs had brought, selected specific leaves, roots, seed Pods crushed them systematically, extracting oils and compounds. Mixed them with measured amounts of supplement base, heated the mixture to precise temperatures I recognized from advanced biochemistry protocols. Where did you learn pharmaceutical synthesis? Thorne asked Scanner. Documenting everything. I didn't. I'm making plant food. Veronica adjusted the heat. Flowers are chemistry. You want healthy blooms, you need the right nutrients in the right ratios. Too much nitrogen, you get leaves, but no flowers. Wrong pH, nothing absorbs correctly. These cubs are the same. Protocols are giving them everything except what they actually need. She was using florist techniques to synthesize xenobiological supplements. It shouldn't have worked. The chemical complexity alone should have required advanced training, but the mixture she was creating was producing readings on Thorne's scanner that made the xenopsychologist's crest rise in surprise. Director, this compound profile matches their home world vegetation almost exactly. How is she doing this? I have absolutely no idea, I admitted. Veronica drew the mixture into a feeding implement, approached the small cub carefully. The other cubs made space but stayed close, watching intently. She administered the supplement in small doses. The cub's throat worked weakly, swallowing once, twice, 3 times. We waited. I counted heartbeats, station ventilation cycles. Thorne's scanner displayed vitals that remained dangerously low. Then the small cub's eyes opened, focused. She made a tiny sound. The other cubs responded immediately, chirps and rumbles that built into a chorus. Several pressed closer, touching noses with the small one, grooming her gently. She needs more, Veronica said, and the others need proper nutrition too. This one's just the weakest. They're all suffering deficiencies. I pulled up our dietary protocols on my data pad, cross-referenced them with the compound profile Thorne scanner was showing, found the discrepancy immediately. We'd been feeding them based on adult nutritional requirements. Cubs needed different ratios, different trace elements. The home world data we'd used was incomplete. We made an error, I said aloud. Admission felt like swallowing glass. The protocols were extrapolated from insufficient data. Your protocols assumed they were just small adults. Veronica said, preparing another dose. They're not, they're growing. They need building blocks, not maintenance. Nutrition, it's like trying to grow roses with cactus fertilizer. Similar plants, completely different needs. She fed the small cub again. Color was returning to her fur, movements growing stronger. Commander Yeltris spoke quietly into her communicator, giving orders. Within minutes, 3 more researchers arrived at Lab 3. They stopped at the doorway, staring at the 17 cubs arranged peacefully around Veronica's workspace. Director Kesh, one researcher said, are those specimens supposed to be loose? Current situation supersedes normal protocols, Yeltris answered. Before I could, we have a nutritional crisis. The florist is resolving it. The florist, yes, watch and learn. Veronica mixed larger batches of her improvised supplement. The cubs lined up without prompting, orderly, patient. Each took their portion when offered. Swallowed, waited for assessment. She checked each one individually, examined for quality, eye clarity, energy levels. Made notes on a borrowed data pad with observations that sounded distinctly like horticultural assessments but worked perfectly for a xenobiological Evaluation. This one needs extra calcium analogs, she'd say, or this one's showing magnesium deficiency symptoms, or this one's been compensating for protein inadequacy by overworking her digestive system. She was diagnosing them using plant pathology techniques. It was working. Within an hour, all 17 cubs showed improvement. The small one was sitting up, alert, grooming herself. The others were more active, more energetic. Their fur looked healthier, eyes brighter. They stayed close to Veronica, followed her movements, responded to her instructions, which she gave like she was talking to particularly mobile house plants. You need to eat this slowly. No, slowly. I know you're hungry, but you'll make yourself sick. That's better. Good, yes. You can have more in 20 minutes. The cubs obeyed. Thorne's scanner was documenting behavioral changes there, treating her commands like pack hierarchy directives, absolute obedience. She's giving them what they needed, I said. Of course they're responding positively. No, director, this goes beyond gratitude. They've fully integrated her into their social structure. She's not an outsider providing resources. She's pack leadership now. I watched a cub bring Veronica another plant specimen from their collected materials. She examined it, nodded approval, and the cub practically glowed with pride. How long until we can return them to containment? Yeltris asked. Commander, I don't think that's possible anymore. Thorne gestured at the cubs. They won't separate from her willingly. Any forced separation will trigger pack defense behaviors. We'd need to sedate all 17 simultaneously, and given their current stress state, that could be fatal. So what are you suggesting? The cubs stay with Veronica, or Veronica stays with the cubs. Those are the only stable options. Veronica looked up from mixing another supplement batch. I'm sorry, what? You've been adopted, Thorne explained, by 17 apex predators. Congratulations. Before Veronica could respond, the cubs brought her something new. Working together, they dragged a large container across the lab floor. It was marked with hazard symbols, chemical warnings, restricted access labels. They'd access the high-security storage. Again, inside the container were 3 smaller vessels, each holding volatile compounds that absolutely should not have been in cub possession. The cubs arranged the vessels in front of Veronica, sat back, waited expectantly. Oh, Veronica said softly. Oh, you clever things. What is it? I asked, dread building. They're showing me the missing pieces. These compounds combined with what I've already mixed would create a complete nutritional profile, a perfect one. She looked at me. How long have they been trying to tell you this? I had no answer. The cubs had been escaping since arrival, accessing restricted areas, taking specific items. We'd classified it as random destruction, containment breach behavior. They'd been researching their own cure. Let me tell you what it feels like to realize you're not the smartest species in the room. It feels like standing in your own laboratory while a florist and 17 juvenile predators demonstrate advanced biochemical problem solving that your entire research team missed. For 3 weeks, Veronica examined the volatile compounds the cubs had retrieved, read the labels carefully, cross-referenced them with her previous mixtures using my data pad like she'd been doing xenobiological research her entire career. Instead of arranging Centerpieces for ceremonial gatherings. These are enzyme catalysts, she said. Your base supplements have the raw materials but without proper catalysts. The cubs can't process them. It's like giving someone flour and expecting bread. You need yeast, heat, time. Process. I pulled up the home world data we'd used to develop our protocols, searched for enzymatic requirements, found references but no specific compounds. Our source data was incomplete. We'd filled gaps with assumptions. How did they know? Vex asked, watching a cub carefully nose one of the volatile containers toward Veronica. They're prescient. They shouldn't understand biochemistry. They understand hunger, Veronica said. And they've been trying to solve it the only way they could, by showing us what they needed. Thorne's scanner was displaying readings. That made her repeatedly check calibration settings. Director, their problem-solving metrics are spiking. These cubs are exhibiting planning behavior, abstract reasoning, collaborative strategy. That's impossible. Our sapient assessments rated them below threshold. Your assessments were performed on starving subjects. Thorne's voice was flat. Malnutrition affects cognitive function. You were testing brain-damaged specimens and calling them stupid. The words hit like physical impacts. I'd supervised those assessments, approved the conclusions, built entire research protocols on the assumption that these cubs were clever animals, nothing more. They'd been dying and trying to tell us how to save them. Commander Yeltris spoke into her communicator again. Get me xenobiological oversight and legal counsel now. Commander, I felt my core temperature drop. Director, we've potentially been mistreating sapient juveniles. That's not a research ethics violation. That's a treaty incident. The cubs didn't care about our political concerns. They were focused entirely on Veronica, who was studying the volatile compounds with the careful attention I'd seen her give to plant specimens in the hydroponics bay. I can work with these, she said, but I'll need proper safety equipment. These compounds are corrosive and I'll need better ventilation and someone who actually knows chemistry to check my work before I accidentally create poison instead of food. I have 3 degrees in xenobiological chemistry, I said, moving closer. Pride was less important than not poisoning 17 cubs and proving Thorne's assessment correct. Veronica glanced at me. Can you make this catalyst stable in a lipid suspension without triggering thermal decomposition? I ran the chemical equations mentally. Yes, buffer solution with pH correction. Controlled temperature gradient during mixing. Good, show me. We work together. Veronica's florist instincts for biological processes combined with my formal training. She'd identify what the cubs needed based on symptoms and behavioral cues. I'd translate that into specific compound and safe synthesis protocols. The cubs watched every step. When I made an error in measurement, one of them chirped sharply. I rechecked my work, found I'd transposed 2 values, corrected them. Did that cub just quality control my chemistry? I asked. They've been watching you make their food for 3 weeks, Veronica said. They know what works and what doesn't. Another researcher arrived, Dr. Kelmath, senior biochemist. She stopped at the lab entrance, took in the scene, and her breathing spiracles flared wide. Director Kavesh, why are there unsecured specimens in a primary research lab? Long story, we need your expertise. Cubs are malnourished, we're synthesizing. Corrective supplements, verification. Required on compound stability. Kelmuth approached cautiously. The cubs tracked her movement but didn't react. Defensively, they recognized research staff. They'd been observing us as much as we'd been. Observing them, she examined our work, ran her own calculations, cross-G'd our synthesis pathway. This should work. The compound profile matches their home world vegetation. Clusters. Where did you get the formulation data? The cubs provided it, Veronica said, gesturing at the materials they collected. They've been stealing exactly what they needed, we just had to pay attention. Kelmuth stared at the cubs, at their organized arrangement, at the systematic collection of materials, at the small cub who was now healthy enough to groom herself properly. These are the same specimens that destroyed 3 containment systems. They were desperate, I said we were killing them slowly, they responded with the only behavior available to them. We completed the synthesis, created enough supplement for a full feeding cycle, proper nutrition with correct catalyst ratios, everything the cub's biology required. Veronica prepared the first dose. The cubs lined up again, that same orderly patience. She fed them one at a time, checking responses, monitoring for adverse reactions. There were none. The supplements worked perfectly. Within 20 minutes, the transformation was visible. Fur became glossier, eyes brighter, movements more energetic and coordinated. They weren't just healthy, they were thriving, and their behavior changed. The random, destructive activities stopped, the escape attempts ended. They stayed in formation around Veronica, but showed no aggression toward research staff. They were calm, focused, alert. One of the larger cubs approached my workstation, examined the equipment with clear interest, touched a container gently with one paw, looked at me, made a questioning sound. I think she wants to know what this is, Veronica said. I picked up the container. This is a buffer solution. We use it to stabilize chemical reactions. The cub tilted her head, listening. Processing. She understands you, Kelmuth said quietly. Director, these cubs are sapient. Presapient, I corrected automatically. No sapient, full sapient. They've been trying to communicate complex needs through behavioral demonstration because we never listened to their vocalizations. We classified them as animal sounds. Thorne was already running linguistic analysis on her scanner. She's right. Their vocalizations have grammatical structure, consistent phone patterns, contextual meaning variation. It's language. We categorized it as instinctive animal communication. I felt my entire worldview restructuring. These weren't research specimens. These were people, young people, children. We'd been treating children like laboratory animals. Commander Yeltris returned with 2 officials from Xenobiological Oversight. They observed for several minutes in silence, watched the cubs interact with Veronica, watched them demonstrate problem solving, watched them communicate. Director Kesh, the senior official, said, "You're aware that sapient juvenile detention requires completely different protocols than animal research containment." I am now, I said. These cubs should have been placed in education development programs, not research habitats. This is a significant classification error. The initial assessment teams rated them presapient based on home world observation data. home world observation of starving populations that had been displaced by ecological disaster. The official pulled up reports on her data pad. Your source data came from refugee populations, traumatized, malnourished, cognitively impaired by environmental stress. You extrapolated sapience ratings from damaged subjects. Every decision I'd made was built on flawed foundations. Every protocol was wrong. Every assumption was backwards. What happens now? I asked. Now we fix this. These cubs require proper educational placement, psychological support, foster care, integration. The official looked at Veronica and, apparently a florist. Veronica was sitting on the floor now, surrounded by cubs. They were bringing her more items, not survival materials. This time personal items, someone's stylus, a decorative cloth, a small toy. One of them must have kept hidden. Gifts, real gifts, not desperate. Survival communications, tokens of affection. I can't take care of 17 cubs, Veronica said. I'm a florist. I grow plants. I don't know anything about raising children. You've kept them alive when our entire research program was killing them. Yeltra said, you're doing better than the experts. One of the smallest cubs, the one who'd been critically ill an hour ago, climbed into Veronica's lap, curled up, made a contented sound. The others settled around her in a protective circle. They've chosen you, Thorne said. Predator pack bonds are permanent. You're their family now. Veronica looked at the cubs, at their amber eyes watching her with complete trust, at their careful positioning, always keeping her safe, at the small one sleeping in her lap, breathing steadily, alive because she'd paid attention when no one else would. I'm going to need help, she said. Finally, and a much bigger workspace. And someone needs to explain what I'm supposed to feed them long term, because I cannot keep making supplements from stolen chemistry equipment. We'll provide full support. Oversight official said, housing, resources, educational consultants, whatever you need. In my plants, I still have a job. Your job just expanded significantly. Yeltra said, you're now Xenopedi Foster Coordinator. Congratulations on the promotion. Before Veronica could respond, the cubs brought her one final item. Working together, they dragged something large into the lab, something they must have been saving. It was a container from the medical wing, sealed, marked with biohazard warnings. Inside was another cub, older, larger, barely breathing. The cubs had brought her there dying. Elder. So there I was, standing in my research lab at what I'm generously calling the lowest point of my professional career, watching 17 cubs beg a florist to save their dying elder sister with improvised plant chemistry, and realizing my scientific expertise had been comprehensively outperformed by stolen office supplies and desperate children. The elder cub was in worse condition than the small one had been. Adult-sized, maybe 80 cm at the shoulder, but emaciated, fur patchy and dull, breathing shallow. Her eyes barely opened when the cubs carefully extracted her from the container. How long has she been like this? Veronica asked, already moving to examine her. The cubs responded with a chorus of distressed vocalizations. Thorne's scanner translated the linguistic patterns. Approximately 9 days, she was their den leader before station capture. She's Been giving her food portions to the smaller ones, of course she had, we'd been feeding them inadequate nutrition. And the elder had sacrificed herself to keep the young ones alive longer. Classic pack leadership behavior. Classic sapient altruism, we documented it as abnormal eating patterns and adjusted feeding schedules to compensate. I need the medical scanner, Veronica said, and the full supplement synthesis. All of it. She needs immediate intensive care. I provided the equipment. Kelmath started preparing maximum strength supplement doses. Vex cleared workspace for emergency medical intervention. We moved with the efficient coordination of professionals trying desperately not to think about how we'd contributed to this situation. The cubs arranged themselves around the elder, grooming her gently, making soft sounds, comforting sounds. They were providing palliative care with the skill of experienced practitioners. Vitals are critical, Kelmuth reported. Multiple organ systems in failure. She's been declining for weeks since containment began, I said quietly. She's been dying since we brought them here. Veronica administered the first supplement dose directly into the Ellers's bloodstream. Emergency intervention. Bypassing digestive processing entirely. Come on, she murmured. You've kept them alive this long. Don't quit now. The cubs watched in absolute silence. 17 pairs of amber eyes fixed on their elder, waiting, hoping. The medical scanner showed minimal response. The Ellers' systems were too compromised, too much damage, too long without proper nutrition. It's not working fast enough, Kelmuth said. We need additional catalyst compounds. The intravenous delivery is inefficient for these particular enzymes. What about aerosol? Veronica asked. Their respiratory system is highly efficient. If we could get the compounds directly into her lungs. I ran calculations. Theoretically viable, but we'd need to synthesize a vapor-stable version. The heat required for aerosolization would break down the active compounds. Not if we use cold sublimation, Kelmuth interjected. Flash freeze the supplement into crystal form. Introduce it to a heated chamber. It vaporizes without decomposition. We had the equipment, we had the compounds, we had 3 professionals with comprehensive training and a florist with uncommon sense working together. We synthesized the aerosol supplement in 6 minutes, record time, motivated by 17 pairs of eyes watching our every move. Veronica administered it using a medical vapor delivery system. The elder breathed it in, once, twice, 3 times. Her chest rose and fell with slightly more strength each cycle. The medical scanner showed improved readings, marginal but improvement. Again, Veronica said. We repeated the treatment and again, cycling between intravenous supplements and aerosol delivery, providing her system with everything it needed through every possible pathway. The cubs never moved, never made sound. They watched their elder fight for survival with the patience of people who'd been watching her do exactly that for 9 days. After 20 minutes, the Ellers' eyes opened fully focused. She looked at Veronica, at the cubs surrounding her, made a sound that my translator identified as a question. The cubs erupted in response, joyful sounds, relief sounds. They pressed closer, grooming their elder with renewed energy, celebrating. She was awake, aware, alive. Veronica sat back, hands shaking, Slightly. She needs continuous treatment for at least 3 days, constant monitoring for nutritional support, a la Rain. Medical facility space, Commander Yeltis said full intensive care setup. No, Veronica said firmly, she needs to stay with her pack. Moving her away from them now would be cruel. They've been caring for her this whole time. They deserve to be present for her recovery. The oversight official nodded, agreed. We'll convert appropriate space for collective medical care. The Cubs stay together and they stay with me, Veronica added. I'm not splitting this family. I looked at the Cubs at their protective arrangement around their recovering elder at the small one, sleeping peacefully against Veronica's side at the others watching us with intelligent awareness. Family. That's what they were, not research specimens, not pre-sapient animals. Family that we'd been destroying through scientific precision and cultural ignorance. Director Kravish, the oversight official, said your research program is suspended pending full review. These Cubs are being reclassified as sapient juveniles requiring foster care. Placement, all your data will be audited for classification errors. I nodded. Understood, I'll provide full cooperation. Your research focused on predator behavioral patterns in contained environments. You'll now be studying how institutional incompetence nearly caused an extinction-level event for an entire generation of displaced refugees. The words were harsh, accurate, deserved. However, she continued, your immediate response to this crisis has been exemplary. You recognized the error, collaborated with unconventional expertise, prioritized subject welfare over professional reputation. That shows capacity for growth. What does that mean practically? I asked. It means you're being reassigned. New position, xenopediatric research coordinator. Your job is ensuring this never happens again to any species. You'll work with Veronica as foster care specialist, learn from her methods, document proper protocols for integrating biological understanding with practical caregiving. I looked at Veronica, who was checking the elder Cubs' vitals again while simultaneously accepting gifts of office supplies from the younger Cubs. She was doing xenobiological research without realizing it, treating sapient juveniles like particularly complicated house plants that needed specific care and attention. It was working better than 3 degrees and 6 cycles of formal training. I accept the reassignment, I said. Over the next hour, we established proper care protocols, medical monitoring for the elder, nutritional schedules for all 17 Cubs, educational assessment arrangements, psychological support services, everything they should have received. From the beginning, the Cubs adapted immediately to the new structure. They understood rules, schedules, expectations. They'd been trying to follow our protocols the entire time. We'd just been implementing the wrong ones. Veronica named them. She said families needed names, not specimen designations. The elder became Nova, the small one became Ember. The others received names based on personality traits that Veronica identified through careful observation. They loved their names, responded to them immediately, practically glowed when addressed individually. Commander Yeltris arranged new quarters, not containment habitat, actual living space large enough for 17 Cubs and their adopted human, connected to the hydroponics bay so Veronica could continue her actual job while supervising her unexpected family. The cubs helped her move supplies, carried boxes, organized materials, demonstrated cooperative labor that would have been impossible for pre-sapient animals. I documented everything, my new research focus, understanding how we'd failed so completely, preventing future failures. 3 days later, Nova was fully recovered, walking, eating independently, grooming herself. She still stayed close to Veronica, but the desperate edge was gone. She was healthy. All 17 cubs thrived under proper care. Their cognitive assessments showed intelligence levels consistent with young sapient beings. Their language development accelerated once we started actually listening to them. They attended educational programs, learned station protocols, integrated into community activities, behaved like the children they'd always been. Veronica continued working in hydroponics. The cubs often accompanied her, helping with plant care. They were remarkably good at gardening, patient, attentive. They understood growth cycles and nurturing processes instinctively. Or maybe they'd learned from watching someone who actually paid attention to what living things needed instead of what protocols suggested they should need. I found Veronica in the hydroponics bay one morning, 6 weeks after the cubs had first brought her gift. She was planting decorative ferns in the mess hall while Nova and Ember supervised, occasionally bringing her tools or soil samples. How are you adapting to foster care coordinator duties? I asked. Same as floristry, she said, patting soil around a fern's roots. You give them what they need. You pay attention. You adjust when something isn't working. You don't assume the manual knows better than the actual plant. She glanced at me. Or the actual cub. That's not how we're trained to do research. Maybe it should be. Nova brought Veronica a watering container. Ember brought a handful of fertilizer pellets, carefully counted out. They'd learned her systems, anticipated her needs. She'd taught them that through example, paying attention, responding appropriately, treating them like people who deserved respect and care. I'm writing new protocols, I said, for xenopety research. You'll be listed as primary consultant. I'm just keeping them alive. Yes, that's exactly the expertise we were missing. Veronica smiled, accepted the supplies from Nova and Ember, thanked them with genuine warmth, continued planting ferns in the messel while 2 apex predators helped her make the station more beautiful, one decorative plant at a time. My research career had been built on complexity, advanced theories, sophisticated protocols, peer-reviewed excellence. A florist had saved 17 lives with plant food chemistry and the radical concept of actually listening. I had new protocols to write, a lot of